Good morning, everybody, and welcome to those of you who are visiting us from outside. Welcome to the OAS, Ambassador Trujillo, distinguished ambassadors and delegates from member states, our visitors and guests, the OAS community, and other partners who are joining us for this most important discussion. Welcome. For me, today marks an important milestone for the OAS. I don't think one of my colleagues was saying when he first joined the OAS, we probably would not be having this discussion. And so this is a pivotal moment for us, and we're very pleased that you're able to join us for this discussion. And we encourage a continued discussion going forward on the subject of the LGBT issues within our society and our work. To begin, I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Trujillo, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the U.S. to the OAS. Ambassador Trujillo, welcome, and you have the floor.
Good morning. Welcome to the OAS. I would like to begin by thanking Kim Osborne, the OAS, the core group. One of my colleagues, Ambassador Montserrat, is here, and as well as our team. Michael Pointer. Mike, raise your hand. Mike has worked really, really hard to put this event together, as well as Andrew Stevenson from my mission. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your hard work. Distinguished colleagues from the diplomatic community and the OAS, panelists, guests in the audience, good morning. On behalf of the U.S. mission to the OAS, and as chair of the OAS LGBTI core group, I'm pleased to welcome you to this important discussion about economic prosperity for all, tourism, and LGBTI communities. Today, representatives visiting from member states, the private sector, civil society, as well as the OAS Secretariat will highlight efforts to create opportunities for LGBTI tourism and highlight the economic benefits this brings to the Americas. Taking a broad view international travel statistics, in 2018, the World Tourism Organization calculated that there were 1.4 billion with a B, worldwide international tourist arrivals, with approximately 217 million arrivals in the Americas alone. It is clear that people around the world are interested in exploring the Americas to see firsthand our many natural and cultural treasures. I'm pleased that Brand USA is here in our audience today. Brand USA, raise your hands. And I wish to highlight their efforts to work with governmental, local, and corporate partners in welcoming LGBTI travelers from around the world to the United States. Brand USA markets the United States by highlighting our nation's unique history, iconic locations and neighborhoods, and many festivals and events. Tourism is big business. The World Travel and Tourism Council estimates that visitors spent approximately $327 billion on travel and tourism in the Americas in 2018 alone. It's estimated that LGBTI travel comprised some 5% of this, equivalent of $16 billion. This is why countries have strong incentives to attract LGBTI visitors. The key to success is to make LGBTI travelers feel safe, welcome, and fully justifiably confident that their rights will be respected. We can attract even more tourism if we forge an inclusive approach for tourism, and as a result, generate even greater economic gains. So creating an inclusive environment for LGBTI travelers is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Developing the markets also deepens our economic and people-to-people ties, reinforces hemispheric security, and promotes rule of law and region free from discrimination. Thank you all for joining us today. With that, we'll turn it over to Kim for our panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And just taking from your words, it's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. I think that is key to our discussion going forward. And I'd like to thank Ambassador. Ambassador, do you have to leave? No?
We have a, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim.
I know that you have to leave it. Fantastic. Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us for the discussion. I would like to begin the discussion, by reading from a study which was published by USAID and the UCLA, the Williams Institute, which states the following. The study analyzed the impact of social inclusion of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender the LGBT people on economic development in 39 countries. 29 of those countries are emerging economies. What the study found, and just for the purpose of discussion, to let you know that the countries from our region, the LAC region that were included in this were the Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Peru, and Venezuela. And these are the countries from our region that were included. And the study found that when LGBT people are denied full participation in society because of their identities, their human rights are violated, and those violations of human rights are likely to have harmful effects on a country's level of economic development. Further, several theoretical frameworks argue that the inclusion of LGBT people is linked to stronger economy. In the human capital approach, inclusion allows LGBT people to achieve their full economic potential when they can get education and training that improves their productivity and when they are treated equally in the labor market. The study continues. The capabilities approach suggests that greater rights and freedoms improves individual well-being by expanding individuals' capabilities to be and to do what they value. The post-materialist demand for human rights theory suggests that greater economic development might make countries more likely to respect the rights of LGBT people. As LGBT people can freely organize and push for legal changes, and as public opinion shifts to support greater individual autonomy and minority rights. The strategic modernization approach posits that countries hoping to present themselves as more visibly modern and successful to potential trading partners might be using LGBT rights strategically as a way to promote and expand economic opportunities. And then I want to posit a little bit on tourism. My background happened to be in tourism. I started at the OAS as a tourism professional. I studied tourism, and it's kind of interesting that we're having this very broad discussion on tourism. And the numbers for tourism are very telling. I want to just put those on the table as we begin this discussion. The 23rd Annual LGBT Tourism and Hospitality Survey found the following in the US. On average, LGBTQ participants took 3.1 vacation or leisure trips and 1.5 business trips in the last 12 months. And that was as of December 2018. 80% of the people surveyed indicated that they will not travel to destination that treats their local LGBTQ community poorly. 84% of people surveyed indicated that they will not travel, that they're more likely to travel to destinations with sexual orientation and anti-discrimination laws. 75% indicated that they're more likely to travel to destinations with gender identity and anti-discrimination laws. 52% indicated that they will travel to a destination that is LGBTQ unfriendly as long as they feel safe as a tourist. 46% will only travel to LGBTQ welcoming destinations. American LGBTQs are active international travelers. 77% of the participants reported having a valid passport compared to 36% of the US general population. Among these passport holders, 53% used their passport in the past year to travel to another country. So the numbers tell the story. This is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do if you are a tourism destination. And when we talk about tourism, we usually use the words welcoming, hospitable, friendly as tourism destinations. When we promote ourselves as tourism destinations, these are the words that we use. I remember very vividly when we were making the case as to whether tourism should be considered a sector or an industry. We went back to Article 24 of the human rights, the universal human rights. Article 24 speaks of the right to rest and leisure. And we thought that we were building an industry because we were directly responding to one of the universal human rights. Again, not just the right thing to do, the smart thing to do in this context. And with that, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel. I'm so very thrilled to see the diversity that we have on this panel, the reach that we have on this panel, and it is my pleasure to introduce the panelists who are joining us at the table today for this very interesting discussion. We have with us Julio Cesar Calval Murillo, who's president of the LGBTI Chamber of Commerce of Costa Rica, and not just a president, but a founding member of that organization. And we're very pleased to have you, Julio, join us. You're right next to me. And then we have Luis Manuel Ochoa, who's deputy director of registration and licensing for the municipality of Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Welcome. Denise Najib, and I have some data or some bios fully, and I will read from the ones that I have. Denise Najib, Vice President of Sustainability and Supply Diversity of Marriott International, and Denise currently serves as Vice Chair of the Board of We Connect International, the global organization supporting women businesses around the world, and Chair of the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce Procurement Council, and on the board of the Conference Board Sustainability Center. She most recently served as Vice Chair of the Global Business Travel Association's Sustainability Committee and Chair of the Conference Board Sustainability Council on Innovation and Growth. Welcome, Denise. We're also joined by Gavin Malloy. Gavin is Vice President of Corporate Real Estate for United Airlines. In his role, he is responsible for overseeing all planning, engineering, and construction efforts for United U.S. and international airport and airport facilities. He also manages leases and landing fee obligations, execution of facility-related capital improvements, as well as United environmental sustainability and compliance functions. Gavin was founding president of United's Business Resource Group for the LGBTQ community. Welcome, Gavin. Thank you. We're also joined by Peter Giorgi. I hope I'm saying that right. Peter Giorgi, sorry, from Celebrity Cruises. In April 2016, Peter Giorgi was named Chief Marketing Officer for Celebrity Cruises. He manages all aspects of our global tourism platforms, for Celebrity, brand strategy and development, digital marketing, social media research, loyalty, and direct marketing and advertising. Peter is an ad agency veteran, previously serving as Vice President for Pristine Porter and Bukowski, one of the world's most awarded advertising agencies. Welcome, Peter. And then finally, we have Phil Crahan, who serves as Director of the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, liaising with affiliate chambers across the globe and representing the LGLCC on the international market scale. On the international scale. He has 12 years of experience in research and data analysis, programs and knowledge generation specific to LGBTI socio-economic empowerment, social inclusion, and gender-based violence. Welcome. Maryse Robert is the Director of Economic Development at the OAS. Welcome, Maryse. Maryse is a PhD in economics, so she'll be providing some great insight on the economic impact of this. And with us is also Betilde Munoz, who will be doing the closing remarks, Director of Social Inclusion at the OAS. So we have a pretty diverse panel. The methodology we'll use for this is we'll have opening remarks by each of the panelists, and then we will move into a question and answer discussion, kind of a Davos-style discussion, so that we have a more dynamic process going forward. So I will start with Senior Julio Cesar Calval from Costa Rica, who's joining. Thank you for joining us all the way from Costa Rica this morning. You have the floor.
Good morning. Hi. My English is not that good, but I'll try to do my best.
1 second. And just so that we know, we have interpretation in the 4 languages. In two languages. I sort of 4 in the back. English and Spanish. Spanish is on channel 8, correct? Channel 7, and English. English on channel 8, and Spanish on 7. And then this is also being broadcast live via webcast. So just so we have those inputs, and then you can proceed if you choose to. If you need to speak in Spanish, please feel free. There is interpretation.
Well, I'm going to do it in English so I can practice, and you can practice Spanglish and in Spanish too. So when I was coming here on the car, I was very nervous. Now I'm over nervous, but I'm pretty fine now, I think, because I got to know you while she was speaking. Thank you for having us. We're so proud to be part of this panel and speak about what Costa Rica is doing in terms of progress and economic progress. And when I usually start talking in Costa Rica about diversity and inclusion, I usually like to mention that this is not only LGBT rights, it's human rights. So the entrepreneurs, they kind of relax on that, and they like it sometimes. And one of the main reasons I do that is because I try to reach the people that are homophobic from the standpoint of human rights, not LGBT rights only. So we don't generate exclusion right away in the conversation. And it's funny because they feel more comfortable when we talk about human rights and not LGBT rights, because they feel if I talk about LGBT rights, we are going to convert him into an LGBT person or so. That's the kind of thing I feel when I speak with them. So I kind of make the conversation more smooth, and I tell them it's human rights, so they better understand that everybody's equal when we're talking. And the biggest challenge that we've been having since we found the chamber is how to convince the Costa Ricans, corporations, and the government, and the society in general about respect the human rights, and how better they can understand that everybody is equal worldwide, and how to make them also understand the difference between respect and tolerance in the community. The tourists that visit countries worldwide, they don't come to our destinations to pay for being discriminated. They pay to the hotel owners, the travel agents, and tour operators to receive an equal service. And that's the main speech that we are telling to our, to our members on the chamber, so they better understand what are the needs of the LGBT market when they show up to Costa Rica. And the biggest needs is security. Costa Rica has no army since 1948, which I'm very proud of that. But they are not looking for that kind of security. They are looking for they need to feel safe in the hotel room. They need to feel safe in the reception. They need to feel safe in the gardens where they are walking through. They need to feel safe in the transportation service. When they show up to the airport, they need to feel safe when they show up in the front door of the airport. And the welcome in the destination needs to be pure and clear and sincere. Otherwise, they are going to feel that they are going to be rejected in every place they're going to travel to. And that is no good for business, because one reason, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to buy wine, I'm not going to buy spa services, and I'm not going to buy tours to go around the properties I'm going to stay at. So the importance to make clear this point to the hotel owners and tour operators in Costa Rica has been a challenge for us, but they definitely learn when they see the numbers. And that's exactly what we do as a Chamber of Commerce. When I found the Chamber in 2015, I was really, really concerned about what is going to happen to me, because definitely I have to come out of the closet in the whole country. So everybody knows I was gay. And, but I took it as a personal goal, and I decided to come out as an entrepreneur, because I own a travel agency in Costa Rica, and nobody knows in general that I was gay. So I have to tell everybody that I was gay on the news. But at first, what I did first, I talked to my mom and tell Mom, I'm going to say I'm gay, so don't watch the news. She didn't listen, of course. she was a little nervous because I come from a Christian church and a Christian family. And she was like, what are the people are going to say? And I just say to her, nothing. You just say that you're a proud mom and for what I'm doing, because I'm not killing people, I'm helping people. And she basically took it as a speech. And when somebody asked her in the neighborhood, what is Julio doing? She says he's helping people. That's what she says. And she's nice with that. She's a very open mom, by the way, now. So I think it's very important to send a message to the entrepreneurs in Costa Rica and Central America, the importance of having the diversity of the tourism that visit us every year. We cannot send a message in the world that we are not a safe country in terms of discrimination because the people are not going to show up. And this is our speech to the hotel owners, tour operators, travel agents, so they better feel secure. So the way I found a way to make the people comfortable with the speech of non-discrimination, so I managed the whole speech in around the ODS from the, I can't remember how to say it, Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you. You add some to my words, to my learning English. So the ODS are very important for our chamber because we're telling the entrepreneurs, the hotel owners, and every people in Costa Rica that ODS are very important to develop the country. Not only an LGBT rights topic, but also a human rights topic for everybody. So the first goal that I'm developing in Costa Rica with everyone is the 17. Do you know the 17? Partnerships. It's very important to do partnerships. I can do partnerships if I don't really care who you are, what you do in private, right? We just do partnerships and we do business. And this is something that I learned from my first conference that I attended with the NGLCC, which we're a proud member of in Central America. And the first time I show up at this conference, I was not aware of who is trans, who is gay, who is lesbians, I just did business in my first encounter with big corporations. Nobody's asking, nobody's looking me weird, or I didn't have the chance to look someone weird because I was focused on business. And this is our speech in general in Costa Rica.
Thank you so much, Julio. I'd like to now give the floor to Denise Najib from Marriott International.
Thank you very much. So Marriott International, just to frame up sort of who we are as the world's largest hotel company, hospitality company, we have nearly 7,000 hotels in 130 countries. We absolutely have at our core value putting people first. It has been from our founding over 90 years ago. Our founders put that as the core of our company, and it is still remains today one of the five cultural cores of our company. We absolutely feel and believe that human rights and being welcoming to all, it is how we will succeed as a company. We have shown that in our activations through our associates, where one of our key areas of focus for our strategy for diversity and inclusion is for our own associate base. We have over 750,000 associates around the world that both greet our guests every day and do the work behind the scenes to ensure those guests are greeted with respect. And to support them, we have specific trainings and engagements so that they understand the opportunities for them to be part of that welcoming strategy. So for example, we have a training class online, which is very specific to the LGBT community, on how to welcome guests into your hotels that are LGBT. And what things to not say at a front desk. For example, if a couple comes to the front desk and is checking in, the front desk agent notices they have one bed and it's two gentlemen or two women, and they should never ask, do you actually want two beds? It is a fundamental, simple element, but it is a way that instantly either makes somebody feel welcome or not welcome. So it is a base that absolutely our guests feel from the moment that they step onto our property. Even even before that, as they're booking their stays with us, from a marketing perspective, it is very clear that we are welcoming to all. Again, back to the comments that Mr. Julio mentioned around human rights being the fundamental element of this, and is absolutely how we see it. And as a guest is cruising through our marketing materials, whether it be specifically on our gay and lesbian travel site or on any of our channels, they should be able to see themselves reflected in the communication that we are offering. They should not see themselves being excluded from the way that we market. And as part of that, we have had a very specific focus for a very long time on marketing holistically to ensure that we are including all diverse populations, inclusive of LGBT, in our marketing. So whether that be through our Love Travels campaigns, to basically show and reflect that we are a reflection of the communities where we do business. So that really touches on the consumer aspect of it from a training perspective. We also do a lot of training with our sales teams to ensure that they are addressing and communicating to our audiences differently. So whether that be, how do you address communities in China, or how do you address communities in Latin America, and specifically understanding those cultural norms and being sure to understand that as the base, and then overlaying the LGBT component on top of it. So how do you actually manage and communicate to a client in Latin America that is LGBT in order to do business with them? And we're talking about communities that are booking, large events with us, meetings, events, as well as individual travel. And lastly, from a supplier perspective, so my team oversees the aspect of supplier diversity for the company, and one of our 4 pillars for diversity inclusion. We could not be successful in our supply chains without having a holistic and inclusive supply chain. And that aspect of it also includes our engagement with LGBT suppliers around the world. And we only do that successfully through our partnerships, like those we have with the National LGBT Chamber. They are out there, and their affiliates around the world, understanding, as Julio said, how do you actually open the door to ensure that LGBTIs, business enterprises, understand that we want to do business with them, and that they should be proud of their status and know that corporations around the world respect and expect that they be comfortable and confident knowing that they are going to be have an equal playing field at the table from a procurement perspective as we make decisions on the things that we source, whether it be products or services. So ensuring that we are very open with that publicly. We report every year on our spend. We have goals that we set on our spend with diverse populations, inclusive of LGBT. We educate and engage our procurement leaders around the world that make these buying decisions, as well as our business leaders who are also making many buying decisions, on how to address the conversation if you are working with somebody, as well as how do you actually seek out and find diverse populations in the LGBT space that are doing business. We have absolutely found that LGBTBEs, business enterprises, deliver more innovations. They are quicker to deliver. They are more flexible and nimble, and they're willing to work with us, whereas some other more structured businesses that have maybe historically been incumbents in our supply chain are a lot more challenged to make those changes as we flex. And in this day and age, with everything moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute, especially on the digital side, we absolutely need partners that are willing and able to do that. So I think the LGBT space has a phenomenal opportunity in the travel and tourism sector. We absolutely depend on and expect that we as a company are showing up as an inclusive community, understanding that human rights is fundamental to who we are as a company, as well as how we must operate in order to be successful no matter where we do business.
Thank you, Denise. We now move to Luis Manuel Ochoa Teo from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Luis, you have the floor.
Buenos días. Gracias por la invitación. Sí. Pues mi nombre es Luis Manuel Ochoa. Yo soy funcionario del Ayuntamiento de Puerto Vallarta y soy miembro de la Asociación de Comercio y Turismo LGBT de la ciudad, ¿sí? También una asociación joven, igual que la de Costa Rica. ¿Sí? Pues estoy aquí por la invitación que nos hicieron para hablar sobre este crecimiento que ha tenido el turismo gay en la ciudad de Puerto Vallarta. Sí, es un crecimiento que en los últimos años, pues creo que muchos de ustedes conocen, o en general nosotros nos hemos dado cuenta de todos estos cambios. Y bueno, en nombre de nuestro alcalde, ¿sí? Que se llama Arturo Dávalos, que es un gran líder que tenemos actualmente. Reciben todos una invitación para que se enamoren de esta hermosa ciudad a la cual todos son bienvenidos. ¿Sí? Sí. Bueno, hay personas que a lo mejor no conocen, pero bueno, Puerto Vallarta está localizado en el centro de la costa del Pacífico mexicano, en el estado de Jalisco, y se considera como el destino de playa más mexicano, ¿sí? Con sus tradiciones, su cultura, con una de las mejores propuestas gastronómicas de México, ¿sí? Tenemos un clima húmedo tropical, mucho sol, hermosas montañas, ¿sí? Y es el principal destino de playa de México, que cuenta con la mayor cantidad de negocios enfocados al segmento LGBTI y que tiene una gran comunidad multicultural, ¿sí? Que convergen en la mayoría en la zona romántica. La zona romántica se le conoce así a la zona gay, ¿sí? Es parte del centro de la ciudad, ¿sí? Este pequeño mapita que vemos ahí es lo que nosotros consideramos la zona romántica, así se le conoce y así se promociona, ¿sí? Y en esta pequeña zona, pero de mucha importancia, es donde es el epicentro de la vida gay de Puerto Vallarta. Sí. Sí. Bueno, creo que todos los destinos o ciudades tienen una pequeña historia y Puerto Vallarta no sería lo que es hoy, como este reconocimiento que tiene como uno de los mejores destinos LGBT en México y del mundo, si no fuera por estas dos grandes pioneros, estas personas, se llaman Paco y David, fue una pareja de más de 30 años, ¿sí? Ellos fueron los primeros empresarios en invertir en Puerto Vallarta en el segmento LGBTI. Fueron fundadores del primer club llamado Paco Paco, que abrió en 1989. Tuvieron el primer hotel gay, que se llamaba Descanso del Sol, y la primera playa gay privada en México, ¿sí? Pero sobre todo, ellos fueron los primeros defensores de los derechos humanos de la comunidad LGBTI, que en los años 90 y primeros años del 2000 se dieron muchos actos homofóbicos y abusos de poder por parte de las autoridades, ¿sí? Y en varias ocasiones fueron a prisión ellos por defender a sus amigos, a sus clientes y turistas que sufrían de estos abusos. También se les recuerda por apoyar a muchas personas de bajos recursos viviendo con VIH para que pudieran trasladarse a la ciudad de Guadalajara, que en ese tiempo era la ciudad más cercana donde podrían recibir atención médica adecuada, ¿sí? Entonces, para nosotros ellos los recordamos como unos héroes dentro de la comunidad, ¿sí? Actualmente estamos trabajando con el gobierno para que el gobierno celebre cada año en el aniversario de la ciudad un reconocimiento que se otorgue a la comunidad LGBTI que llevarán el nombre de Paco y David, ¿sí? Entonces, es algo que estamos trabajando y creo que muy pronto se va a dar, ¿sí? Durante los primeros años del año 2000, ¿sí? Empezó el florecimiento, este boom de la comunidad LGBTI y de los empresarios en ver a Puerto Vallarta. Se establecieron 9 hoteles y más de 25 bares y clubes nocturnos enfocados en este mercado, ¿sí? Durante los últimos 15 años, ¿sí? Durante todo este tiempo, muchos de estos empresarios se unieron para trabajar por un mismo objetivo, que consistió en promover el destino a nivel nacional e internacional y atender los casos de discriminación y otros abusos que se presentaban a la comunidad y a los turistas LGBTI. Esto debido al poco interés de las autoridades pasadas para prevenir estos actos de homofobia y ayudar a Puerto Vallarta a promover en el segmento LGBTI. ¿Sí? Donde estamos nosotros ubicados, pues es muchos conocen de México por ser un país de machos, ¿sí? De muchas tradiciones, católicos con su cultura. Entonces, muchos de las autoridades anteriores pues no tenían el interés de promover el destino como un destino gay. Entonces, siempre querían como, son todos bienvenidos, pero no hacer una promoción como un destino gay, ¿sí? Entonces, eso ya cambió, pero bueno, sí. Gracias a esta unión de estos empresarios, ¿sí? Nació hace 5 años la Asociación de Comercio y Turismo LGBTI, de la cual también soy miembro, ¿sí? La cual a la fecha tiene más de 150 negocios afiliados, ¿sí? Y vienen a sumar esfuerzos en común para atender todos estos problemas, defender los derechos, promover el destino y tener la fuerza y la voz ante las autoridades. ¿Sí? Muchos de estos miembros que tenemos actualmente son hoteles también locales, ¿sí? Que vinieron a sumarse, a aperturarse a este segmento de negocio, a esta comunidad, que ya se han ellos beneficiado de la derrama económica de toda esta comunidad que se hospedan en esta zona, ¿sí? Entonces, pues muchos de estos hoteles familiares locales pues han decidido sumarse para hacer hoteles gay friendly, ¿sí? Y en la actualidad la Asociación de Comercio y Turismo LGBT estamos trabajando para capacitar al personal de estos hoteles, restaurantes y todos estos negocios para evitar que se violenten los derechos de todos los turistas, que sí los tuvimos en el pasado y hemos tenido ya muy pocos últimamente. Sí. En México pues no existe de parte del gobierno, de las autoridades mexicanas, como el interés por tener estadísticas oficiales para medir la derrama económica del impacto de la comunidad del turismo LGBTI. Pero de acuerdo a un estudio que la Asociación de Comercio y Turismo LGBT de Puerto Vallarta pidió que lo realizara la Universidad de Guadalajara, ¿sí? Y otros medios enfocados al turismo, ellos calculan que hasta un 30% de los visitantes anuales que llegan a Puerto Vallarta pertenecen al mercado LGBTI, ¿sí? Obviamente muchos de estos turistas también se hospedan en cadenas como Marriott, que es un hotel que tiene bastantes miembros de la comunidad y que se hospedan ahí, y otros hoteles grandes, ¿sí? También tenemos, bueno, la ubicación de Puerto Vallarta es una bahía muy grande, ¿sí? Entonces, si esta bahía tiene 3 municipios, la compartimos, ¿sí? Del lado norte pertenece al estado de Nayarit, ¿sí? Ahí se encuentran hoteles de lujo como Four Seasons, San Reyes, W, ¿sí? Y muchos de estos hoteles también pues tienen esta gran apertura para la comunidad y este segmento, que es un segmento de lujo, ¿sí? Y actualmente pues muchos llegan y se hospedan ahí 3, 4 días y después quieren venir a Puerto Vallarta para disfrutar el ambiente de la comunidad, ¿sí? En este sentido, se estima que Puerto Vallarta ha tenido un crecimiento de más del 20% de turistas LGBTI en los últimos 7 años, el cual se ha visto reflejado considerablemente en la zona romántica, que es nuestra zona gay, ¿sí? Y en el número de nuevos negocios e inversiones en el segmento LGBTI, ¿sí? Aquí en esta gráfica podemos apreciar el número de negocios que se han aperturado, ¿sí? Aquí estamos mostrando los últimos 5 años, que es cuando este crecimiento se ha visto reflejado, ¿sí? Un ejemplo que está ahorita, nosotros lo ponemos como ejemplo, es este nuevo hotel de lujo que abrió apenas hace como 5 años, menos de 5 años. Este hotel es de unos empresarios locales que ellos, por estar ubicados al lado de la playa gay, ¿sí? Que sí es muy conocida como Blue Share, ¿sí? Pues ellos iniciaron como un hotel gay friendly por la ubicación y un hotel para adultos, ¿sí? 2 años después que ellos vieron que el 90% de sus clientes y de sus ventas estaban enfocados al segmento LGBT, decidieron oficialmente ser un hotel LGBTI. Entonces, actualmente ellos son el hotel, el negocio, la empresa con la mayor inversión. Que tienen, se calcula que ellos tienen más de 30 millones de dólares invertidos, tienen un club de playa, tienen su hotel de lujo, ¿sí? Que muchos de los huéspedes que llegan a Four Seasons, San Reyes y estos hoteles, a Marriott también, después deciden hospedarse con ellos para poder disfrutar de esta cálida comunidad, de poder caminar en esta zona, ¿sí? Esta zona de la zona romántica es una zona de 15, 20 cuadras, ¿sí? Entonces todo está cerca, pueden caminar, no ocupas un vehículo para trasladarte, la playa, los bares, los restaurantes, las tiendas, o sea, todo lo puedes hacer ahí relativamente cerca caminando. Entonces, y lo más interesante de este negocio es que ellos son de una familia tradicional local. Estos empresarios no son gays y actualmente son los mayores promotores para promover Puerto Vallarta. Ellos son los mayores personas que están apoyando la asociación local que se llama CETAC, es una asociación que promueve la lucha contra el VIH, ¿sí? Ellos ahorita están al frente de promoción de hacer el Vallarta Pride, el que se hace cada año. Entonces no son gays, pero ellos se han puesto la camiseta de decir, le vamos a entrar, gracias por todo ese respaldo que hemos recibido de ustedes. Entonces ellos, pues los tenemos ahí como un ejemplo, ¿sí? Y aparte, digo, ellos todavía van a invertir otros 7 millones de dólares más en una nueva torre que están en construcción para poder tener su hotel al 100%, ¿sí? Entonces, esto es un ejemplo. Bueno, en los últimos años, en los últimos 4 años, la zona romántica o la zona gay, se han construido más de 20 nuevos desarrollos inmobiliarios, ¿sí? Que vienen a sumar más de 900 nuevos condominios de lujo, ¿sí? Y según estimaciones de las agencias de bienes raíces locales, más de un 50% de las ventas de estas propiedades han sido adquiridas por personas de la comunidad LGBTI. Y datos de la Oficina de Planeación Urbana del municipio estima que son más de 1.770 millones de pesos la inversión en estos nuevos desarrollos, ¿sí? Esto se le suma a los ingresos que recibe el gobierno por prediales, por licencias de construcción, ¿sí? Debido al éxito del desarrollo comercial que existe actualmente en la zona romántica, existe una mayor demanda por espacios comerciales en la zona y se calcula que más del 95% están ocupados y derivado de la alta demanda, el costo de las rentas se ha incrementado considerablemente en esta zona. Y bueno, se preguntarán cómo se ha logrado todo este boom, ¿sí? Entonces, digo, todos estos pasos que hemos dado, ¿sí? En el 2013 fue nuestro primer Gay Pride en Puerto Vallarta. Se preguntarán que es un destino gay de mucha tradición, pero no teníamos una celebración, ¿sí? En el 2015, nuestro actual alcalde, ¿sí? Él tuvo la primera cena con los empresarios de la comunidad LGBTI, ¿sí? Como precandidato, ¿sí? Aún no era nuestro candidato, y mostró su interés y apoyo completo para la comunidad, ¿sí? Fue la primera vez que un candidato tenía este acercamiento, ¿sí? Ese mismo año, nuestro actual alcalde tomó protesta como alcalde, ganó las elecciones y en su discurso inaugural él habló sobre que iba a ser un alcalde para todos, para las minorías, para todas preferencias sexuales y el apoyo completo a la comunidad. En 15 de diciembre, aquí lo voy a poner, fue cuando abrió las puertas el Hotel Al Mar, ¿sí? Como hotel gay friendly, ¿sí? El 16 de abril, nuestro alcalde, cuando fue legal en todo el país el matrimonio igualitario, él casó personalmente a la primera pareja de gays y lesbianas, ¿sí? En septiembre del mismo año, Grupo Al Mar, este hotel, fue cuando decidió salir del closet, dijo él. Entonces ya oficialmente no soy gay friendly, somos hotel LGBTI, ¿sí? En mayo del 2017, por primera vez en la historia de Puerto Vallarta y de México, el alcalde participó al frente del desfile gay, del Gay Pride, junto con su esposa, bomberos, policía y miembros de su gabinete. ¿Sí? Fue un hecho histórico para nosotros y este evento, este acontecimiento, tuvo como un poco de una réplica que ese mismo año, el mes siguiente, en la ciudad de Guadalajara, el gobernador en turno decidió asistir al Gay Pride de Guadalajara a cortar el listón inaugural y se iluminaron los edificios de gobierno de la ciudad de Guadalajara. Entonces fue como un efecto dominó que se tuvo. En junio de un mes después del Gay Pride, el alcalde tiene su primer encuentro oficial con miembros de la comunidad empresarial y líderes, ¿sí? Para hablar sobre todas estas oportunidades y problemas que se presentaban en la comunidad, ¿sí? Entonces, y de esa fecha a la actual hemos estado trabajando en todos estos puntos. En 2017, algo que nos ha ayudado mucho es la seguridad. El INEGI consideró a Puerto Vallarta como la ciudad más segura de México, ¿sí? Gracias a nuestra ubicación, Puerto Vallarta está rodeada de montañas, entonces esto nos ha protegido de tener los accesos más controlados y aparte la inversión fuerte que hizo el alcalde en seguridad y en prevenir todos estos delitos. ¿Sí? En 2018, la Comisión Estatal de los Derechos Humanos emitió una recomendación a todo el Estado y a los 125 municipios sobre los derechos de la identidad de género de las personas trans. Esto conlleva a que el municipio o todos los municipios que aceptaron estas recomendaciones, no fue una recomendación exclusiva a Vallarta, fue para todo el Estado, se comprometieron a capacitar todo el personal de los funcionarios públicos, hacer todos los trámites para el proceso de las personas trans, de hacer sus cambios legales y se ha estado dando todo este capacitación, ¿sí? Y en este año, en 2019, ¿sí? Se tuvo la capacitación de todo el personal de la policía, ¿sí? Atendiendo esta recomendación que hizo la Comisión Estatal de Derechos Humanos, ¿sí? Y hace apenas un mes se firmó un convenio con la Comisión para respetar los derechos, para preservar los derechos y la movilidad de todas las personas. Y actualmente vamos a ser el primer ciudad en todo México en tener un diagnóstico que el propio alcalde solicitó al presidente de la Comisión Estatal de Derechos Humanos para hacer un diagnóstico sobre todos los derechos humanos del municipio. El alcalde no quiere que existan violaciones a los derechos humanos de ningún tipo de sector, ¿sí? Entonces es algo que le estamos aplaudiendo. Y nuevamente este año el alcalde va a volver a ser parte de las celebraciones del Gay Pride y nosotros dentro de la comunidad lo hemos nombrado nuestro embajador este año, nuestro embajador gay, por todo el apoyo que hemos recibido. Entonces, pues gracias a todos su apoyo, es que se ha dado este crecimiento y esta confianza que han tenido los turistas de poder caminar libremente, tomados de la mano, poder salir a divertirse en las noches, en la playa, y muchos negocios que se han sumado porque se han visto beneficiados de este sector. ¿Sí? Y bueno, este es un pequeño mensaje que existe en todos los hoteles y negocios en la ciudad, que da el alcalde a todos los visitantes, donde nos dice que es hoy una ciudad en donde consideramos de primordial interés el respeto a las diferencias a través de un trato digno, respetuoso e igualitario para todas las personas, sin importar nacionalidad, raza, religión, orientación sexual e identidad de género. ¿Sí? Todos los hoteles, la mayoría de LGBTI y hoteles gay friendly, tienen una carta de bienvenida que hace el alcalde y como un aviso que da a los ciudadanos de que todos deben tratar con respeto a todos los turistas. ¿Sí? Pues les hacemos la invitación que visiten Puerto Vallarta para todos. ¿Sí? Todo el año tenemos muy buen clima y mucho sol. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Luis Manuel, for the presentation. An interesting presentation on a destination as a major tourism destination, international tourism destination, and the steps you're taking. Hopefully we can share with others. And we welcome the invitation to Puerto Vallarta. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful destination. Next we have Gavin Malloy from United Airlines. And Gavin, I think you also have a PowerPoint presentation. So if we could switch to that.
Good morning, everybody. We welcome you all to fly with us to Puerto Vallarta whenever you decide to go. At United, our fundamental purpose is to connect people and to unite the world. And how we focus on that with our LGBT customers is in 3 separate ways. The first way is to activate our 85,000 employees as brand ambassadors for this community. Second is our community engagement and partnerships in our community. And then the third is being present at the moments that really matter for our community. I'm going to talk you through some of those things this morning. We're proud to be the world's 2nd largest airline, and that allows us to serve hundreds of millions of passengers every single year who choose to fly with us. We're proud that we fly to 22 of the OIS countries, and 55 cities see United airplanes every single day. So whether you want to fly north, south, east, or west, you can do that with United. The most important thing for me about United is who we are, who our family is, and who our community is internally, and what that means for us. I'm very proud to be part of a company that really embraces diversity and inclusion in everything that we do every single day. You'll see on the screen right now, this is our diversity commitment. And I think the key message is that appreciation and acceptance of everybody, no matter who they are, who they love, is the norm at United. That's how we expect our employees to act with each other and with our customers. We've established a number of business resource groups or affinity groups throughout the organization to represent a number of different diverse populations. So at United, whether you're a veteran, whether you're multicultural, whether you're a woman, millennial, disabled, or a member of our LGBT community, your interests are represented by one of those communities. As part of that mission, we believe strongly that it's important to support our community by upholding the inclusive policies and practices and partnering with LGBT organizations and hosting programs and engagement events to honor that community. My own story is a testament to the inclusive workplace at United. Because of who we are as an organization, I get to come to work every day and be my authentic self, which I believe to be very important. So at United, whether it's taking a stand on the issues that matter most to our community, in this case, as you can see on the screen, the 2015 Supreme Court's ruling to legalize same-sex marriage, or whether it's standing with our community at times of need or sorrow, none more poignant than the devastating loss of life at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. United, as part of that event, we activated our disaster programs to fly families and relatives from all over the country to be with their family members and friends in Orlando. Or whether it's by leading and being a pioneer for our community. What you see on our screen is something we've announced just this year, which allows members of our community who don't identify as male or female on the binary index, or wherever they choose to identify on that spectrum, they get to self-nominate that in our booking path. So if you're male, you nominate yourself as M. If you're female, you nominate yourself as F. Or if you are undisclosed or unspecified, you identify yourself as X. And the same with your title. You're either Mr., Miss, or MX. We are the first US airline to do this. And we're very proud to be able to do this. And we think this is a very strong message that we send to our community, that we are very accepting of who you are. And no matter who you choose to be, you will be welcome on board a United airplane. So because of these things, we have earned the appreciation of our 85,000 employees throughout the world. We're very proud that in 2019, for the 8th consecutive year, we earned a 100% rating in the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index, naming our company as the best place to work for LGBT equality. Also in 2018, we were named as a Best of the Best Corporation for Inclusion by the National Business Inclusion Consortium, and we're looking forward to repeating that achievement in 2019. Right, Phil?
You have to come next week.
We'll see what we can do. In terms of our our representation in the community and being there in the moments that matter most for our customers and our employees. We're very proud to say that pride flies with us at United. In 2018, we were very proud to represent in 12 different Pride parades throughout the globe, actually. Majority in the US, but we also participated in Pride parades in London in the UK, in Guatemala City and Mexico City. This is a hugely important thing for both our employees, feeling that they're accepted and their company is standing behind them in this matter that matters most to them, but also for our employees and also our brand recognition. So we're very proud to be able to be there. So with that, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. On behalf of all of us that work at United, we look forward to continuing to welcoming all of you and the other hundreds of millions of customers that fly with us every year. And we look forward to continuing to experience the wealth and beauty of culture and fun that each of your countries have to offer.
Thank you, Gavin. I think United deserves a round of applause on the 2 awards that they received. So join me. We're going to change perspectives a little bit and hear from Maryse Robert, who's the Director of Economic Development. Within the context of the Secretariat for Integral Development, we advocate for inclusive development, not just development, but development that represents everyone, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Our approach to development is that of inclusiveness. And with that, I'll hand it over to Maryse.
Thank you very much, Kim. And as you said at the beginning, this is very much of it's a first at the OAS to be discussing tourism and the contribution, the challenges, the impact of the LGBTI community in with respect to this industry. What I want to do in the brief time that I have is to discuss what OAS member states, what they are doing in tourism in the context of this discussion this morning. And in that sense, I want to really highlight the vision of the OAS LGBTI core group, and our thanks for allowing us to partner with you in the organization of this roundtable. Now, discussing tourism in an inter-American context is nothing new. In fact, the very first meeting that took place, which brought together senior officials and members of the industry, the tourism industry, took place in 1939 in San Francisco. So that's 90 years ago. That predates the OAS and even the OAS Charter. This, what became known as the Inter-American Travel Congress, it was designed to promote sustainable tourism development. Since 1939, there have been 24 meetings. The last one was held last year in Georgetown, Guyana. So the Congress serves as an important platform for the exchange of experiences and practices to identify common challenges, define solutions. That's where the ministers and their colleagues discuss those challenges and try to define those solutions through policy dialogue, which is eventually transformed into actions through technical cooperation initiative to develop the tourism industry. So at the OAS, policy dialogue in tourism is really central to our work. Now, in preparing for this roundtable today, I went back to the ministerial declarations of the past 8 years, so starting in 2011, to actually see what ministers had agreed to in the context of our discussion this morning. So let me just give you a few quotes, and then I will highlight what will be done in the next 2 years by the ministers. So they have said, they have noted the importance of promoting tourism through an inclusive approach. They have highlighted the potential of the tourism industry to contribute not only to the objectives of development, but again of inclusiveness. They have emphasized the significant contribution of the tourism sector to the advancement and promotion of human rights. And they have also highlighted the need to facilitate the implementation of policies and to create mechanisms to positively change the way that tourism is practiced to improve the well-being of all our peoples. Now, in the context of those ministerial meetings 4 years ago in Lima, Peru, the theme of the meeting was community-based rural tourism, community-based tourism. And starting in 2015 with the leadership of Peru, this became one of the priorities of the ministers. We had, as I said, the last ministerial meeting took place a year ago in Georgetown, Guyana in March 2018. And following that meeting, the tourism authorities developed, prepared, and adopted a work plan. What they're going to do, OAS tourism authorities, what they're going to do in the next 3 years, from 2018 to 2021. And let me say that this is an opportunity for them to actually deepen what they have been saying on promoting human rights and be more specific in terms of our discussion this morning. So the authorities tasked themselves with the idea of planning the formulation of a sustainable community tourism development management model for the Americas based on existing national models and initiatives, taking, of course, into account the context of each country. And they have more specifically said that there should be a manual that will present common and flexible guidelines available to all countries that wish to work as pilots in the implementation of the guidelines in communities with community-based tourism potential. So this represents for OAS member states an opportunity to actually be more specific with respect to the LGBTI community and its role in the tourism industry. Because we know that, you know, this is about people. This is about connection. This is about letting other people know that you recognize them, that you appreciate them, that you appreciate their cultures, their stories, their memories. And when people feel as if they're known, understood, seen, well, they're more open to your perspective and you are more open to their perspective. And that's true for individuals, but that's also true for nations. So we see this as we know that tourism is a key vehicle for economic transformation, but it's also, as we heard this morning, a key vehicle for inclusiveness. So we are delighted to be here this morning and to be participating in what, as Kim mentioned, it's a milestone at the OAS. It's a first, and it won't be the last opportunity, but we count on member states to lead on those issues and to see how we can deepen this relationship and ensure that LGBTI feels not only appreciated and welcome, but that they are seen as an integral part of the tourism sector in all our countries. So with this, Kim, I will give you back the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Maryse, and this allows us to pivot perfectly into the cruise industry, the cruise sector, a pivotal, a key part of the tourism product mix. And with that, I give the floor to Peter Georgi, Chief Marketing Officer of Celebrity Cruises. And Peter has a presentation, if we could upload it. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here from Celebrity Cruises. We operate 15 ships that sail around the world to every continent to 300 different cities. The staff on board those ships come from over 60 different cultures and represent really a true sort of tapestry and really diverse representation of everyone around the world. And we try to develop that and recognize that in the work that we do as a brand. Often in marketing, we talk about sort of segmentation and we talk about different target audiences. We tend not to do that with our brand. It really is about a single brand strategy that is inclusive of everyone. I I have no idea how much more I can make in the cruise industry by targeting the LGBTQ plus community. I don't know. I know that we need to represent those stories in an authentic way, and that we need to use our position to invest in telling stories about that community and in creating positive change for that community. That's really what we focus on. I have no idea how much we can make by targeting millennials, for example. I probably should. Don't tell my boss. So we really do think that the way that we represent, again, the stories of people who travel with us are really important. This is just an example of a campaign we started 3 years ago that's simply called Sweethearts at Sea. And the way we launched that campaign was actually with the image that you see second from the left, with a same-sex couple about to get engaged and experience a super happy moment for them. I would love to tell you that the response to that was extremely positive. It was not. It was completely mixed. And I think that that represents, or what that shows is the responsibility of brands to act in a positive way does not mean that the reception will always be positive. And we as brands have to be willing to accept that some people will not believe the things that we believe, and some people will believe them very strongly. And so it's not just about appealing to communities, but it's about appealing to the broader community that shares the same values as our brand, and we want to represent those values explicitly. We also try to recognize that the onboard experience has the ability to open people's minds and share with them experiences they may not have access to at home. That's really what travel does. So about 3 years ago, we started something called Pride Party at Sea, recognizing that not everyone has access to a Pride event in their local community. We decided to bring those events and recreate those events on board. In the middle here, you'll see Adam Rippon, who was our Grand Marshal for Pride at Sea last year. That particular sailing was sailing out of Bermuda the day after they reinstated marriage equality in the country. So that was a pretty wonderful moment for us and something we felt privileged to be able to bring to life. Doing that kind of work actually has a very positive effect. So we see that when we tell positive stories and when we take a stand, it actually does resonate, and it's something that creates coverage. It's something that creates more conversation, and that, just as I think United has done really admirably, when corporations state their values and act in ways that reflect those values, it has the ability to create positive change and to inspire other corporations to do the same. And I can say that, you know, we discussed what United had done back at Royal Caribbean at Celebrity Cruises, and so it's something, you know, what you're doing is inspiring change, I think, with other companies as well. And ultimately, what is great about travel is that it exposes people to experiences that they could never have. Cruising is a way that allows people access to places they may never go in a way that is extremely comfortable and extremely accessible. You can be whoever you want to be on board our ships, and we just believe that fundamentally travel is one of the best possible ways to create a more open, more accepting, and more progressive world, and we're happy to do it.
Thank you, Peter. We'll now finally, to round up our panel, give the floor to Phil Crahan from the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Phil.
Yeah, thank you so much. The great thing about going last is that you get to see the sheer expertise and champions on the panel. So thank you so much to those champions to my left and my right. Thank you also to the LGBTI core group for organizing this and many other discussions. Thank you as well to the OAS Department of Social Inclusion. Batilde, we'll hear from you in a moment, of course, as well as the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights, particularly the LGBTI Rapporteurship. And also thank you to the OAS LGBT Employee Resource Group. All of you are doing incredible things when it comes to advancing these issues. And to be clear, the time is now to continue this and to amplify our work, right? We are seeing a lot of countries progressing, but we're also seeing a lot of countries stepping back. Many people are talking about this increasing duality with the shrinking middle space, and I think I'm just thrilled to be part of this this event, and particularly talking about something that is a little bit unique, which is the positive impact of tourism and business. So jumping in, I work for the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, which is the NGLCC in the United States. And as a Chamber of Commerce for LGBT people, we really look out for the business owners among us, right? So I think this is really important because in our advocacy, in the vernacular and vocabulary we use, we never actually talk about the business owners, right? It's usually LGBT people as people, or LGBT community as this amorphous group, right? So in between there is, of course, this business owner who are doing fantastic things, right? In many different sectors, in many different parts of society. And when we try to bring them together, when we do bring them together, we find that they're very powerful, right? We contribute significantly. We contend with many challenges that we're trying to get past, but we also contribute to our societies and to the social ethos of our country. So that's a little bit of what we do in the United States. I run the global division, so I look outside of the US often. And we try to borrow in that focus, but the great part about it is that we partner with 14 LGBTI, I for intersex, chambers of commerce around the world, mostly in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's fantastic. It's been incredible to see the diversity of work that these chambers, that my partners put on, and I give a shout out to Julio, of course, from Costa Rica for being one of those great partners. What runs through this, of course, what brings us together is LGBTI economic empowerment and inclusive economic growth, right? So when we talk about the issues that we face, we also have to acknowledge that LGBTI people contend with challenges in labor market discrimination, getting work, advancing in one's job. So we really take this economic approach to social visibility, to progress for our communities. And that's great because it gives us a platform to truly engage the private sector. And again, another shout out to Denise and Gavin for being great partners of ours, for being good corporate champions, not only on paper, but more importantly through actions, right? So that's what our chambers do. They are these platforms. But even more basic than that, even more normative, what really runs throughout this is human rights, right? And I'm so glad to see human rights come up with many of the remarks of folks on this panel, because we cannot talk about LGBTI issues without acknowledging the rights that we all have as human beings, right? Because when we, in addition to labor market discrimination, we're also speaking to issues of violence, of social exclusion, of the ability to find, the ability to go to school and not experience bullying, of the ability to access healthcare. These will always be a human rights issue, and that will always be a part of our work, and actually it will always be the most central part of our work. So I'm going to return to this later, and I bring it up purposefully because we always have to keep that in mind. When we really promote human rights, we can take it to the next level, which is really how do we promote truly inclusive economic development and empowerment, right? So there's a lot of good research out there, a lot of good analytics, work, theories that look at the link between human rights and inclusive economic growth, right? On LGBTI issues in particular, and I return back to the Executive Secretary's remarks by referencing the study from USAID and Williams Institute from a number of years ago, that when you have, when there are rights for LGBT people, we see positive correlation to GDP per capita. In this study, it was $300 boost of GDP per capita, which is quite strong, right? And that's over 30 countries. And not only that, but there's also a positive link between rights for LGBT people and human development as articulated by the Human Development Index by UNDP. So that's an amazing link, right, for LGBT people. And I say T, I stopped at T because this did not include intersex. I'm being very purposeful with acronyms here. And at the same time, actually research from my former team at the World Bank, led by Dr. Lee Badgett, found that the flip side is true. When there are no rights and there's no inclusion for LGBT people, there's actually an macroeconomic impact to GDP, right? We used India as a case study and found that because of exclusion in the sectors of healthcare, employment, and education, there was actually a loss of GDP. Which is really reminding us that there is this strong link between the rights of LGBTI people and larger macroeconomic goals, right? But even aside from that, even aside from the governmental and economic approach to this, there's also a business case. And I won't spend too much time on this because I feel like we know that there's a business case, and I feel like the corporate partners on the panel spoke to that really well. But we also see positive correlations between diversity and inclusion policies for LGBT staff and bottom line profits, right? It's clear, right? And aside from that, we also see empirical links between supplier diversity. To return to Denise's point, when corporations have diverse supply chains, they see all sorts of positive benefits, financial and otherwise. So even aside from that, that's two buckets of why there's this link between human rights and economic development. We also know that at the individual level, of course, when LGBTI people experience homophobia, transphobia, and other stigma, there's a link on their there's a drag on their socioeconomic status. This is an emerging body of research that we need to do so much more in, because of course there's a link between, of course there's a cycle of poverty between those who experience homophobia, transphobia. We see that in a number of countries, and we have to acknowledge that there is a poverty component to this work. So when we really see that there's this link between the rights for LGBTI people at the individual level, the communal level, at the larger social GDP level, and also at the business level, we really can then have the tools and the cognizance of how we advance to better work together with the private sector, right, in particular. And I think to further nuance this to the question of tourism and business, it's so important to start with that link that I just described, right? Because there's a million ways that we could be having this conversation. We could be focusing on the link between business or tourism and LGBTI tourists, which I think, to be fair, is the bulk of discourse so far, right? I think so much of the data and the dialogue has focused on LGBTI tourists going in, how do we work on for their benefit, which, let's be clear, it's a great thing to talk about that. That is part of the puzzle. For a really good look at that, let's turn to the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association's work with the United Nations World Tourism Organization report from 2017 that looks at how do we better create this ecosystem that works on behalf of the tourist. But to be clear, again, that's just one part of the puzzle. We really need to focus on what I see as my starting point, which I see as more important, which is the LGBTI people in the countries where tourists go, right? That should be our starting point, again, with this normative link between human rights and economic empowerment. So my question, what I try to pose and what I challenge us to consider is, for our starting point on these issues, LGBTI issues, and business and tourism, how do we work with LGBTI civil society? How do we work with international organizations like the OAS to create a pathway, a very strong pathway, where LGBTI groups can harness and leverage the power of tourism for their benefit? And I want us to really explore this pathway, because when we do so, then we really find very strong relationships with the private sector. And again, this work with the private sector, which is already happening, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, in Latin America and the Caribbean, works because it's mutually beneficial, right? There's, again, supplier diversity, there's diversity and inclusion in the workplace. But the private sector wants to come to the table, particularly in the tourism industry, if they're getting something out of it, if they're finding that it's both the right thing and the smart thing to do, right? Like, sorry, I don't mean to belittle that, but it's used so often, but let's dissect what it means, right? It's whereby there is a financial but also social positive link for them. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. On the side of LGBTI people, this is different from country to country, city to city. To return to the NGLCC Global Network, right? They are doing all sorts of things, all sorts of really unique things, particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean, with hotels and airlines in particular. And they can do so because we see that the private sector is moving quicker than governments can. And we have to acknowledge this, we have to celebrate this and work, again, on more mutually beneficial relationships. So two examples of this are great. I think are really interesting. So we are trying to work with leaders in Belize to start an LGBTI Chamber of Commerce. And I was invited down there by the United Belize Advocacy Movement, UNIBAM, so that we could co-present to the Belizean Chamber of Commerce. When we were there, we're like, let's hit the tourism, the tourism sector, right? And to borrow from your juxtaposition, this is both an industry and a sector. And thank you so much for all of that on how do we engage the public sector who is working on tourism. So we reached out to them. We said, hey, we want to have a good discussion on the inclusion of LGBTI people in your work. And we had a meeting, a couple of meetings that were just meetings, right? I mean, no offense, this was a first step in the right direction, but in my mind, there wasn't a cognizance that there's a mutually beneficial gain from this, both the right thing and a financially smart thing to do. Cut to when we engaged many corporations, particularly hotels, they're like, yes, what can we do right now? That cognizance is there. It's at this point, it is normative. And that's fantastic. I think we really need to celebrate and, again, work more on those mutually beneficial relationships with them. Another great example is we are very fortunate to partner with partners in Jamaica. So they started a diverse chamber of commerce in Jamaica with really a focus on LGBT people. And they launched within the past year, and what was really fantastic when we were invited down there for roundtables is that they successfully got to partner with 2 organizations that work across the Caribbean in the tourism sector and tourism industry. And it was just really fantastic to see them at the table saying, yes, what can we do? This is a question of talent. This is a question of being much more socially engaged in this context. And that's fantastic. And I think you have to acknowledge that, particularly in a country where there is punitive measures against same-sex acts, that it was really impactful that our partners were able to really leverage such relationships with the private sector. I would be... I cannot leave this discussion without talking about the significant challenges that face us, particularly when it comes to tourism and LGBTI issues, particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean. And that is the significant data gaps that exist on these issues. And I don't mean to be dramatic, but when we have data gaps, we have knowledge gaps. When we have knowledge gaps, we don't have a way to effectively engage our governments or the private sector or even international organizations, right? This is so extraordinarily important. I would say in my examination of tourism, so there is a fair amount that looks at the data or that looks at LGBTI tourists, right? Actually, that looks at LGB tourists, right? Mostly, right? Our question is, how do we really, particularly given that we're at the OAS, how do we focus on generating data with LGBTI organizations in the region, right? What does that mean? That's so important. We're a population that lacks population estimates, right? To be clear, but I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. We lack significant understandings of the violence we face, of the challenges that we face. We have no idea of the socioeconomic status of LGBTI people and the link between stigma and finances. The flip side is also true. We don't have data to understand the contributions that LGBTI people bring, business owners and otherwise. This is a travesty, and we can't stand for this, right? It's 2019. We have all sorts of technologies, finances to generate data and to turn that into knowledge that we can turn into good interventions, right? And the time is absolutely now to be doing this. Data is sometimes a buzzword, right? But really, data is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So if we don't have the data, where's the missing power? How do we effectively utilize this knowledge to go to our governments and to corporations to say, these are the interventions that are needed? So that is why I'm so thrilled that we work with the Department of Social Inclusion and the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights LGBTI Rapporteurship, and supported by the LGBTI core group at the OAS, to really try to begin to generate these data when it comes to human rights and economic exclusion of LGBTI people in Latin America and the Caribbean. It's so important, right? We have data for almost everything else. It's about time we learned how to cultivate that and really tie it into our advocacy strategies as well as our interventions. I'll leave it with, I guess, just a very brief summary. Data is very important. Let's figure out, let's work with the private sector as those that are quicker to work on these issues. Let's work with them to come up with the significant resources that are needed to generate knowledge. Let's work with governments to do so. Let's work with more international organizations to do so. This is my call to action. I'm sorry if it's not coming across on a Friday rainy morning, but I hope we can chat about this because there is so much that we can be doing when it comes to the economic empowerment and human rights of LGBTI people all over the world. Tourism is absolutely a part of that, but to remember, for me, the starting point will always be, and the starting point of the NGLCC Global Network will always be the link between human rights and our economic empowerment. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Phil. And I just want to let you to assure you, Phil, that the data gap doesn't only exist. It's not unique to that area. It's a data gap, particularly in the Caribbean, that we have across sectors. We don't have enough information to to guide our decision making, and that is something as an organization that we would very much like to advocate for and to work with the private sector and see. I just want to bring the discussion a little bit back to the core theme or the topic, which is that of economic prosperity and tourism. And just we don't have probably specific data to our region, but the LGBT Capital, a market research company focused on the LGBT market estimating that the spending power of LGBT tourists was 3.7 trillion in 2015. And Asia takes the largest chunk of this market with 1.1 trillion spending power. Europe, the second largest, with 950 billion, and the US just around 900 billion. And what I want to throw out to the panel is the fact is the economic benefits are clear, right? We see the numbers, yet we still have this apprehension, if you will, from many destinations to open up and to welcome that market segment. And so my question is, what do you think countries need to do? If I am a new tourism destination, if I'm an emerging tourism destination, what should I do to target or to specifically access that market segment? I just want to open up the floor to our panelists.
So I'll go first. Just from sitting and listening to the conversation this morning, I'm a data sample of one in my response right now, but I'm not just here representing United, but I'm also a consumer who happens to be gay, albeit a relatively young, handsome, gay individual. But I get to spend my dollars in a way that is best suited to me, and at times I get to spend my organization's dollars in a way that's suited to me because I travel for work. But when I think about my own personal experiences, unsurprisingly, I flew here with United. Last night I stayed at a Marriott hotel. Yes, last Saturday I got off the Celebrity Summit. I've been to Puerto Vallarta. So the point that I'm making there is that all of these brands relate to me as an individual. And because they relate to me, I get to choose to spend my dollars there. Every country, every city, every town, every resort is also a brand. When they can develop the skills to be able to resonate with me, I will spend my money there. And I'm sure that although I'm a data set of one, I am pretty representative of my community.
Anybody else would like to?
I think an opportunity from the government / regions where this is not yet core to who they are and how they represent themselves, understanding the partners that you have around you that are focusing on this could be a very intelligent first step. Because as you heard today, a lot of the private sector is already focused on this. So imagine communities that want to have this more of a presence, partnering with those companies around that are already focused on this, and how do they actually leverage that and work together as opposed to having it be a marketing strategy for the tourism sector, but not for the governmental side of the sector.
I think what's interesting, if you look at the Americas, is that the cities have been, and we heard about Puerto Vallarta this morning. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and Montreal is very welcoming to. This has been for many years, and you know, people see this the Montrealers as not just a segment, but you know. People are people, so they feel welcome, we feel welcome, and then it allows you to interact with people from different countries, from different backgrounds. So what we see is that cities in the Americas have been branding themselves, a few cities as, you know, LGBT friendly. But Kim's question was, what do countries need to do? So this is where I think in the context like the OAS, there would be maybe an opportunity to do something that brings this not just to the community, from the community level, the city level, but to a more a holistic approach which would bring countries together on those issues. So I think we have the leadership of many, many cities in our region, and then we can learn from that and maybe do something that is a little more than just having, you know, pockets here and there.
Thank you, Maris. And Phil, I wanted to go back to the case that you were making, which is that nexus between rights and economic opportunity. Yeah, and so we know that we still have about 78 countries in the world with anti-gay laws on their books. Yeah, some of those cases with very severe punishment. Yeah, and so what do you think should come first? I'm very wary of destinations having anti-gay laws, but marketing to the gay community, the LGBT community. What should come first? Should destinations with these anti-gay laws market to tourism to the LGBT community simply because of the economic benefits, or should the laws be changed? Because we are talking about also the local LGBT community and how they're impacted within their own communities. You made that point in the discussion.
Yeah, not an easy question, but I'm happy to offer some ideas to this. It's very context specific, so what I say should be considered greatly for country to country. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying which should be first, the laws on the ground for LGBTI citizens, or catering spaces for LGBTI tourists, right? The quick answer, and what I will always stand by, is to consult LGBTI civil society first and foremost. That has to be the most basic thing, right? And we do see a number of countries that at least have laws against same-sex acts, and that are destination places, right? And I think when I travel to some of these countries, certainly not all of them, but a few of them, it's always civil society, it's always LGBTI organizations that have the understanding of what is needed in their context, because it's not a one-size-fits-all that we can expect us to take on both sides of this issue, right? There are certain institutions that are better situated to work on these, to work on the legal side, whether that's the Organization of American States, whether that's the United Nations, whether that's the government itself, whether it's lawyers within the LGBTI movement. You need to go and ask them first and foremost, can both coexist at the same time? Or do we need to specifically, like, what is our space in this? Like, do you want us to come in as tourists with buying power, with the pink dollar? Or do you want us to come in by, by working with you through the NGLCC Global Network or through the OAS? I think they'll set that tone first and foremost. I think where there are laws and when there is stigma against LGBTI people in these countries, that doesn't necessarily stop tourism or an economic approach to LGBTI issues. We find in a number of these countries that, particularly when there's an LGBTI chamber of commerce, they can do significant work with corporations. So it's not that laws necessarily prohibit any meaningful action through this economic lens. It just has to be really negotiated by the experts in those countries. And I will say that in those spaces, we do find that the private sector, some corporations in particular, are ready to work with them in a way that's a little bit more under the radar, and in a way that's a little less visible, which is very creative. It's part of the equation to working in a mutually beneficial way. I think to jump to the flip side of this, I think I really just want to caution us against, if we, and I mean as an LGBTI tourist, come across a country that is about to criminalize any part of the LGBTI experience, it raises the question of what do we do, right? What do we do as tourists? And I think there's an example right now, perhaps I won't say the country, but it's, they're looking to really create punitive measures against LGBTI people. And recently there's been a revival of this campaign to not enjoy the hotels of one of the country's leaders, right? Who is this coming from? Who's calling for this boycott? As far as we can tell, it's from movie stars right now, and we have to really we have to walk a very delicate line between being an international community that still does something, that still says something, that still says this is unacceptable in 2019, we can have these laws on the books. But at the same time, we don't want to be outsiders enforcing something that could bring greater visibility and vulnerability to LGBTI citizens in that country. So I return to my first point. Can we talk with LGBTI organizations, civil society, and members of the community in that country? What do they need? Let's let them dictate the terms of this. And in this example I'm alluding to, I really hope that we do our homework and we're listening to the right people.
Kim, do you mind just if I add a couple of comments? So as a large employer in a lot of countries, some of which do have these discriminatory laws against people of LGBT community, it is absolutely challenging for us to, ensure that people who want to work with us understand that our values are different than the civil society around them, B, feel comfortable being part of the community and bringing their whole self when they walk into our doors as opposed to the societies around them, and C, ensuring that if they are able to do that and they're accepted by us as a community, that they are also not putting themselves at risk when people from the outside come into our doors and see them being who they are. So we have a lot of our institutions, our hotels, that are in these kinds of areas. And so I think it goes back to Phil's comment about without having that being part of the central society that we are part of, when it is absolutely detrimental to the full success of our own institutions. We cannot do it alone. We cannot have this island in the middle of a community where around the rest of the community it is not supported. So I think it is absolutely no matter what the private sector's focus is and allowing people to be who they are, allowing tourism to come in and be part of the community, if the surrounding is not supportive of that, it is not going to be conducive to the success. Secondly, to Phil, to your comment about this particular situation, I think one thing to think about too is the hotels that are being boycotted are actually not in those countries. So they are actually impacting people and societies that are completely disconnected from the tourism and the economic engine of that particular country. So I don't know that it's actually going to do anything to that particular country.
Thank you, and I have a whole host of questions written, but I want to open it up to the audience. We have a number of member states represented and partners represented. I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. Is there anything that you would like to ask of the panel, or any comments that you would like to make on the subject matter that we're discussing? And the mic is open. Thank you, Jose Manuel. If you could please identify yourself and what country or organization you're representing, that would be great.
Okay, I'm the alternate representative of Peru to the OAS. I mean, as the speaker were talking, many things was going through my head, especially from Phil, about how we seize what is happening in tourism to benefit the rest of the LGBTI community. Because what just Kim said about the laws, because I think a lot of people want, especially business community, and there's nothing wrong with that, is to benefit from the part of the dollar. So yes, we welcome you to come, right? But things for the local LGBT community doesn't change at all. I mean, they're still discriminated and things go on. Also, another thing that was going through my head is like there's also an idea of what is an LGBTI person, and I'm sure most of you have been in Cusco, in Machu Picchu, and you know that the Inca imperial flag is a rainbow. Usually what happens is LGBT community arrive to Cusco and they say, oh, this is a very friendly city. And what happens usually is that the locals get very angry, I mean, because they see, I mean, this is not a gay flag. And it's just the imperial Inca flag that we use. And we're talking about what Mr. Molo say about, I'm going to use my dollars and and I will support my community, and that's perfectly acceptable. We also living in a situation that I think Phil said, like we're going backwards. We have different groups that are just promoting the opposite everywhere. I will not provide you service because of religious reason or whatever other reason, and this has been by many governments accepted. They said, okay, fine, don't provide service to the LGBTI community. Also, I think this stereotype of the LGBTI, forget that we also have a lot of tendency with LGBTI families, I mean, with children. No? And one thing is to promote LGBTI destination for, I don't know, singles or people who don't have children. And is there any special policy taking into account when it comes to LGBTI families when they want to travel with children? I mean, is that taking into account? And also, I think what about inclusion? That doesn't only apply to LGBTI communities, to any minority. You exclude a minority, you lose point in your GDP. You include a minority and you allow them to a life fulfillment, and the GDP grows accordingly. I think in the region we've done a lot of progress, but I think the awareness should not only be when we talk about like tourism or other economics, because we provide income to those communities, but it should go more like Phil said, I think. How we can make this really something that will help change and benefit for the community. So that's basically my comments.
Thank you so much, Peru. And before I give it to the panel, I'd like to give the chair to the ambassador from Costa Rica.
No, está bien. Muchísimas gracias. Voy a hablar en español. Bueno, primero, muchísimas gracias por este panel. Un agradecimiento también especial a la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, a la misión ante la OEA, por liderar este semestre, este año, el core group de LGBT en la OEA, del cual Costa Rica forma parte. Primero una reflexión, y me parece fantástico un panel de esta índole. Uno, porque se refleja en lo positivo, que es fundamental, en los aportes de la comunidad LGBT, pero también señala otro punto, y es que el avance en la igualdad es una responsabilidad no solo de la comunidad LGBT, sino de toda la comunidad y toda la sociedad. Y quiero resaltar el comentario de Denise sobre la importancia de la comunidad alrededor de las comunidades. Y yo creo que aquí se genera una simbiosis muy importante de el aporte de las empresas turísticas y las comunidades. Cómo se genera un cambio que muchas veces puede ser rechazado por las comunidades, pero por otro lado, a nivel social, genera inclusión, y eso siempre es esencial. Mi pregunta va retomando el detalle que señalaba Phil. Muchas veces cuando hablamos de la población LGBTI, estamos hablando en realidad de LGB. La población trans en América Latina tiene condiciones de vida muy por debajo del resto de la población, tienen una esperanza de vida de 35 años, es la mitad del resto de la población. ¿Qué aportes puede tener la industria turística para mejorar las condiciones de vida de la población trans en América Latina? Eso es. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador. I believe there was another question behind.
Thank you so much. My name is Juan Pablo Delgado, and I'm representative of a Mexican civil society organization based in the state of Guanajuato. It was particularly interesting to see the remarks from Luis. Yo fui en algún momento representante del gobierno de León, Guanajuato, y pues era una realidad bastante distintos. Qué bueno que pasa esto en Puerto Vallarta. And I wanted to just emphasize how important it is to think about the remarks that Phil did, because I think we focused a lot in this conversation about the part of the LGBT community that can travel in the continent, but we are overseeing or like literally not seeing what happens with the rest of the community, which happens to be most of them, most of us. So more than asking you a question, it would be more like inviting you, especially the representatives from enterprises, to think about ways that you can give back to the community and think about corporate social responsibility strategies that you can implement because you're clearly receiving a benefit from those LGBT individuals that can travel around the world. But what are those strategies that you can follow within our countries to empower our communities, not only economically, but also socially, since you have the economic power to actually pressure governments to make things happen. And finally, just emphasize how important it is to collect data. And that's something that you should really put attention on. So clearly consider doing partnerships with the governments in order to collect data on whatever type of area you would be interested in getting to know more, because non-intervention, either from the public or private sector, will be successful without having any data. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We have two questions from two ladies, both in white. I'm sorry. Oh, Andrew, you have the mic. Go ahead, and then I'll pass it on.
Sure. Andrew Stevenson from the U.S. mission to the OAS. Just very briefly, I guess it's a question more for the private sector presenters. In terms of what we've heard about laws, legislation, the process for trying to ensure more coherence between international norms, regional, international standards, and domestic and local legislation, to what extent, I suppose, again, question for the private sector representatives, is there a lobbying approach or an engagement approach with parliaments, with legislatures, with elected officials in terms of trying to ensure more coherence with your brand, with your mission statements? Certainly it's something in the United States we're aware of in terms of the executive branch versus the legislative branch, but we know legislation, change efforts, change champions can really be advanced through the legislative process versus the executive process. So it's a very interesting question as we talk about incoherences or inconsistencies, how you view engagement with the legislatures. That's my question. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. And the lady in white at the end.
Well, my name is Magdalena. I'm from Uruguay, a small country in South America. And I'm here representing the GGBA, which is the Golden Gate Business Association, the world's first LGBT chamber of commerce here in San Francisco, California. And I wanted to comment about what Denise said about the Sultan of Brunei and the boycott that the celebrities are doing. From what I read, they are like trying to do like an economic block boycott to the hotels that the Sultan owns. So I know what you said, that it's going to be like to do more harm than good, but I would like to know how to proceed with that, how to deal with when something like that happens and we have like a clear proposal from the celebrities, but what other ways are for us to, you know, to deal with it and try to work with a solution.
Thank you so much. Right behind you is another question. The two gentlemen. Fernando?
Yes, excuse me, my name is Ed Hall, and I'm the tourism coordinator for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And all of your comments have been really on point for a number of things, but I work with the indigenous communities of the United States, and looking at these issues, they transect across, you know, all of these various impacts. And one of the key things they're talking about is marginalized communities, you know, and so when we're looking at the gay and lesbian, transsexual, the whole gamut. These are people who've been marginalized. And yet we're talking about a sector of travelers who happen to have the resources to impact on another level. And tourism really is an industry of diplomacy, and that's what we look at in terms of what we call Indian country. And it's giving us an opportunity to provide, through tourism, a positive impact locally for our communities, because they see us as an asset versus as having been the various stereotypes and things that they have about us. And I see that the same way with, with the LGBTI community, is we have to look at not just the people who are traveling, but how do we really work with the marginalized communities to empower them to shape this industry from their own perspectives, to provide them that avenue of capitalizing, as it were, on this, but more importantly, it shapes outside pressures from positive reinforcement can shape domestic change. And I think that's an important thing to look at.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pause here for a little while. We have so many questions already, and for some reason, on to my right, nobody seemed to be awake. I think all the questions are coming from the left, but I'm going to give the panel a chance to respond to some of the questions that we've heard. We heard about the inclusion of families and from LGBTI families. Are they taken into account? The idea of the trans group and what support tourism gives to improving the quality of life for transgender people. We talked about giving back to the community and strategies for doing so. Looking at laws and engagement, the public and private sector. Is there an advocacy taking place so that there's coherence between the brands that the private sector represent and the legislation that is in place in some of our countries? The indigenous communities, the boycotts, do they work? So I'm going to just open it up to my panel to answer some of those questions. Phil, would you like to start? Or absolutely.
Well, thank you. All the questions are really, really good questions, but I'd like to go a little back of what Phil was saying before. Somebody asked what is come first. And what I think, what it comes first when you are targeting yourself or your product or a destination as an LGBT destination, the first thing we need to do is educate the people. The model in Costa Rica for sustainable tourism is quite beautiful and big because we create a ring of education since 25 years ago or more. And we were talking about hotel owners, tour operators, travel agencies, how to implement regulations in their own properties to save energy, power, clean water, how to bring back to the rivers the water without any contamination. And the hotel owners, they were very upset about it because they thought about how much it's going to cost me to do this and that. And investors, when you want to do a proposal to investors, there is three answers, there is three questions you need to answer. How much is it going to cost? How many years I'm going to get my money back? And how much money I'm going to make on that. When you're making a proposal, you have to answer those three questions because the investors, they want to pay, they want to invest, but they need a business plan. And education is part of a business plan for companies. If we don't, as a community, I'm speaking right now myself as an individual, if we don't communicate our feelings, and if we don't communicate our situation to our families, to our neighbors, to our friends, there is not going to be a change. Because if they don't have the information, there is not going to be change on anything. So education, I think, is something that have to come first. Our Chamber of Commerce in Costa Rica has been implemented in the last 2 years, several workshops in the hotels, in the rural areas. And I applaud all the work that Marriott is doing worldwide, and I usually use it as an example in our conferences in Costa Rica in the rural areas, because those are the places where the people need more information about all the LGBT that is traveling in Costa Rica, they don't want to stay many days on the city for one reason. We don't do parties, we don't sell party, which we do have disco clubs and all that, but mostly they want to experience the country and the gastronomy, and they want to see the countryside. But they're going to face discrimination in the countryside as well because we don't bring the education. So I think education have to come first, and then a marketing strategy, because if you teach them first and they know how to manage the information and what to do when they have a transgender person in a hotel reception, and that's the main point. And majority of the people, I believe, discriminate on any cases because they don't have information about the topic. And I think it's very important to educate the population. In terms of the trans community, Costa Rica has many opportunities right now as a government. It has been implementing many rules and regulations and laws to attend and see the transgender people. Right now, the Social Security, they can do in any operations or any medical situation they might have. The government is already teaching their staff how to attend this community in the hospitals and in the offices, in the public offices. But also the private sector needs to do something about it and provide business opportunities for the trans community. And Costa Rica is advancing on that also as well. As a chamber, we're promoting to one of the deputies in the Asamblea Legislativa and the legislative power to give to corporations certainly points when they want to do business with the government if they do a well management of diversity within their corporations. And that's something that we're working on as a tools. We need to create the tools to help the LGBT community, but also to help the people that are homophobic or transphobic, because if you don't have the information, it's not going to be a change.
Thank you, Julio. I want to give the private sector a chance to touch on the question on legislation. Phil, were you going to say something?
I can wait.
Okay. To touch on the question between the brand coherence and the legal aspect or the legislative aspect of it.
So, I mean, I've talked a lot about what our own brand values are at United, and I believe they're core to our mission and they're core to what we do, and I think that's what we expect our employees to represent in the communities where they live and work. I am not the expert here on what we do in terms of individual countries or individual municipalities. I can tell you we like celebrity. We take the view that when we target certain markets, it's about targeting everybody, and we believe the market reflects the inclusiveness that we have as a business. I do really agree with Julio's comments around education being the core to solving this problem. I mean, I think about our own company as a microcosm for the world almost. We have 85,000 people, and today we still educate our employees about what it means to be trans, for example. We have a fantastic pilot, Jessica Taylor, who she's leading the way in terms of working with regulatory agencies around the medical issues that a pilot needs to overcome in order to be licensed to fly in the US, for example. And bringing Jessica to come and talk to the employees of United has been, pretty eye-opening for people. I mean, she talks a little bit about how you take your pen in the hand that you're not normally supposed to write with, and you write a paragraph for 10 minutes. And that's how she feels every single day when she is living her life. It just doesn't feel right. It feels weird if she's not in the right body. And that resonates with people, right? At the end of the day, we're all people, we're all humans. And being able to tell stories that relate to people through educating folks, I think is the key to cracking this particular nut, wherever it is in the world. So
our model for Marriott International is we have 120 2, I believe now, what we call business councils. Those are generally general managers or senior leaders within the hotels in the communities that collect together and work on specific issues that matter to them and to that community. And oftentimes that's where the issues around government and addressing government issues or concerns comes out of, is meeting the needs of those particular constituents as leaders within those communities, understanding where either things are coming up or exist today that are hindering their ability to be successful as a business, whether that be from an employment perspective, from a procurement perspective, from a tourism perspective, even things like, for example, if there are changes to legislation around routing and how many flights can come in, those things obviously all impact business. So it gets very micro in terms of the work that's being done in those communities, but it's being done by those who are closest to the work within those communities through our business councils.
Yeah, I just want to pull together a few questions that popped out. So your question, you're saying that you find a strength in when you speak to the resilience of the communities you work with, and I agree 100%. I think we have to always work on the balance of working on the challenges of our communities and talking about those challenges and working past them, but also celebrating the successes and the resilience of our communities. I think that's something that we can be doing a lot more on LGBTI issues, and we do celebrate like legal wins, but I think something that we could also attach to our advocacy is the strength of our communities, how much we contribute as business owners, as folks who work in companies, as the list goes on, right? I think there's a good balance to strike, and we find a strength in that balance when we at the NGLCC work with other chambers of commerce who work on other social issues, right? So through our National Business Inclusion Consortium, we work with chambers who promote women-owned businesses, African-American-owned businesses, person with disability-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and it's something that when we come together, we really get the attention of particularly corporate America, but also our governments, and that public-private sector side can be really strong to that. But like, let us never forget the challenges, because there is that balance. Thank you so much for our colleague from Costa Rica for asking specifically about trans, because we say this LGBTI acronym really quickly, like particularly me because I talk fast, and it just rolls off the tongue, right? But like, we have to acknowledge that there's certain, like in a lot of countries, that particularly trans and intersex people as well, even though we're saying that acronym, we're specifically leaving out the challenges and successes that they work in. And I think there's some really good work by Red Lack Trans and other trans-led groups, particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean. I mean, I know there's many that really work and show that the issues that they face, particularly violence, are significant. And it echoes research and data from across the world. So research that I was part of in Thailand, India, Georgia, and the South Caucasus, you always see trans people as being facing the most. So facing this dual issue, hypervisibility being extra stigma against them, but more invisibility when it comes to actually being meaningfully part of diagnostics and data collection efforts. So much more needs to be done there. And again, let's work on those challenges. Let's go to trans-led organizations to see what they have to say, how they can lead in this space, and also celebrate in those successes. And to turn to the last part, you asked a really good existential question: what is an LGBTI person? Who is an LGBTI person? And it's, you know, we can't come up with that because we're so diverse. We are as diverse as the mainstream non-LGBTI population. We're people of color, we're young, we're old, we're disabled, we're everything. We're poor, we're rich, it's everything in that acronym mirrors, I think, the general population. And I think it's fantastic that intersectionality is really becoming a meaningful part of these discussions, our programs, and analysis and data collection. And we really need to promote that so much more. And because for me, and I think for many, it again comes back to human rights, right? It's not really LGBTI rights, it's the human rights of LGBTI people, it's the human rights of women, it's the human rights of indigenous people, right? That puts us onto the same level of celebrating in what we have by virtue of having dignity and being people. And that's why I really need us to discuss, to work on, to address when governments in particular are attacking the rights of women and then try to promote the rights of other marginalized groups. No, literally, we're all connected, We have those same inherent human rights, literally, and then metaphorically, we're also very allied, right? So women's rights groups are working with LGBTI groups, are working with people with disability groups. So to truly advance a human rights that is robust means acknowledging human rights across the board, and we won't settle for anything less. We won't settle for what I call, and what many people call, a pinkwashing, which is when we choose to work on one set of issues and not another. That is pinkwashing. We push past that. So let's push past that. Let's talk about that. Let's look at human rights as really robust and interconnected, and again, that is our starting point.
Wow, we're fresh out of time. And I think to the core group, next time we do it for a day, maybe? Because I think the discussion is rich and could continue for much longer. But we do have a permanent council this afternoon at 1. So I know that many of our delegations have to leave for that. And so with that, I very much would like to give the floor to Betilde Munoz. And before Betilde, I have to say that to the panelists, thank you so much. I mean, so diverse, so rich, so amazing. Thank you for joining us for this, for the panel discussion. I've enjoyed it. I didn't get all of my questions answered, so probably we can talk during the break, but over to Betilde for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Kim. I want to start by quoting a 2017 study by Gallup that indicates that in the US, the proportion of American adults who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender increased from 3.5% in 2012 to 4.1% in 2016. This would be around 10 million adults who today identify as LGBT in the US. So taking that number, and if we were to use that estimate for the rest of the Americas, using data from CEPAL, out of the 1 billion people who live in our region, we could be talking about around 40 million people in our region who identify as LGBTI. The question that brought us here today is how to ensure that those 40 million people can receive the benefits of and contribute to their nations and the region's inclusive development, looking at the particular case of the tourism industry. We're talking about the lost talent that we're not taking advantage of, the lost earnings, the lost spending that could potentially benefit companies and economies, the growth and development that is people leaving behind. We cannot lose sight of the moral arguments to have these types of discussions and promoting work and concrete actions on LGBTI inclusion, the human rights argument that has been touched on today. But we understand that sometimes it is the economic argument that can help spark and guide the discussion and can take us to the much needed conversation on ensuring rights and all human rights of LGBTI people. At the same time, the economic argument for promoting diversity in the tourism sector is compelling and practical. We still have a long way to go in convincing countries where religious conservatism impacts the law and social norms, which result in environments where LGBTI people can be harassed, ridiculed, assaulted, arrested, or murdered. When you look at the cold hard facts, like according to the consulting group Out Now, LGBTI plus tourists spend about $218 billion a year. It seems like a no-brainer, as they say in the US, that in order to drive economic development in our countries, we must create more welcoming environments to LGBTI persons. There are so many ways that countries can benefit from creating welcoming environments for LGBTI people, and I want to also point out other vulnerable groups, like the gentleman from indigenous communities mentioned, or the colleague from Peru, that it simply makes more sense to celebrate diversity rather than discriminate and exclude. It is precisely this, supporting member states find the benefits of diversity and of creating more inclusive environments, economies, and democracies, what we do at the Department of Social Inclusion in particular, but also at the OAS in general. I would like to highlight that the OAS enhanced dialogue, cooperation, and information sharing and awareness-raising efforts on issues impacting the LGBTI community has been immensely supported by the OAS LGBTI core group, most of them present here. The department I represent has worked with the core group for the last 2 years, I guess, to hold events to raise awareness of the realities faced by LGBTI people in the Americas. Additionally, one of the main objectives of the Department of Social Inclusion is to get more member states animated to sign and ratify and hopefully implement the Inter-American Convention against all forms of discrimination and intolerance, which is the first and only binding instrument, legal instrument at the global level that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, something that we believe we should be proud of as a region. To date, this convention has been signed by 9 countries of the Americas: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Haiti, Peru, and Uruguay. And last May, Uruguay was the first country to deposit the instrument, and with 2 more ratifications, this convention could enter into force. One concrete practical application of this convention and of all the discussions that we have had today is the OAS Social Inclusion Project entitled Generating the Evidence-Based Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, Social Inclusion and Economic Development, in partnership with the NGLCC Chamber of Commerce. Phil mentioned this project earlier, as well as with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, to develop analytical work in the Americas context to measure the rights and inclusion of LGBTI people from a human rights perspective. What do we want to do? We want to first know what data is available and can be used and analyzed to speak on LGBTI issues. We also want to develop indicators associated with economic and social rights that can be useful in developing policies and also generating other global research. And finally, we want to develop governmental counterparts to champion the process of turning data, analysis, and recommendations into policies that further LGBTI rights and social inclusion. The question of the lost talent, the lost contributions, the lost income, and the lost economic growth in our region is precisely what concerns the organizations that are here today, all of you present, the countries, and I'm sure that it's also something that concerns the audience that is listening to us and also present in this forum. We need to keep asking the right questions. How do we measure the effects of facing discrimination in the workplace? How do we measure the potential contributions of LGBTI people when placed in the most productive positions relative to their qualifications, or we incorporate them into the formal economy? How do we measure the effects of removing the barriers some face because of the lack of proper identity documents? How do we ensure that LGBTI talent can be retained and capitalized on even after they have made their sexual orientation or identity public? How do we take advantage of their talent and contributions in the tourism sector, the technology, manufacture, in all sectors? In closing, let's always remember that tolerance, diversity, and inclusion are not political opinions. They are non-negotiable human rights. We should continue to promote them and protect them for LGBTI people and for all people in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bertilde. And I know that we're not there yet, but I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful because I see life through the eyes of my children, my 2 children, who are way beyond, way far ahead of us in this regard, who are so tolerant, so open, so welcoming. And I think the future in their hands is much brighter than the reality that we live in today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to a continued dialogue and continued collaboration. And we'd like to invite you for a short reception outside before you go on your way. Thank you so much and have a good weekend.